Krillin stands in a circle of legends, a man among gods. He doesn't glow with ancient bloodlines, doesn't unlock destiny with a scream. He is not prophecy, he is not chosen. He's the friend who shows up, the human who keeps breathing when the air turns to fire. How do you measure courage in a world like that? Goku flies toward infinity. Vegeta sharpens himself against pride. Kohan is a storm learning to be gentle. And Krillin, small, mortal, breakable, keeps stepping forward again and again. Why? What does it mean to be weak in a world obsessed with power? What does it mean to fight when the math says you lose? Alfred Adler called it the courage to be imperfect, the decision to act in the full light of your limits. There is strength in perfection, yes, but there's a different, quieter strength in standing up because you aren't perfect, because you could fail, because fear has hands and it's grabbing your throat and you step anyway. Adler believed inferiority doesn't have to shrivel you, it can propel you. Krillin is that thesis in motion. Zen Buddhism adds a second lens, humility before impermanence. The world is passing. Nothing holds forever. Zen doesn't promise invincibility. It points you to presence. Chop wood, carry water, show up for your people. Krillin does not deny death. He stands inside its shadow and chooses to live honestly. To be kind without needing to be epic. To be brave without needing to be mythic. Maybe that's why his moments hit so hard. He's the one who knows he can die and still puts his body between evil and the people he loves. He's the first to panic and often the first to steady. He jokes, he trembles, he bleeds. He is us. So this isn't a hymn to the strongest. It's a love letter to the ordinary, to the ones who fight knowing they're breakable, to the ones who don't transform the sky with their power, but transform a moment with their choice. What if the bravest person on the battlefield isn't the one who can't be hurt, but the one who can and shows up anyway? Krillin isn't a god. He's a witness and a participant, a friend and a fighter, a human being who refuses to let his limits define his worth. That's his secret. Keen, not limitless potential, limitless willingness. Okay? And in a world of gods, that might be the rarest power of all. Before the alien wars and broken planets, there was a boy who ran away from a temple with a chip on his shoulder and a plan. Get strong enough that no one could look down on him again. Orphaned young Krillin learned early what comparison does to a kid. At the Orin Temple, he was mocked, elbowed aside, reminded daily of his smallness. So he left to train under Master Roshi, carrying 2 prayers: become someone and stop feeling small. Then he met Goku. Imagine being 13, arriving at the doorstep of a legendary master hand, finding a barefoot, right farm kid who's never thought about status a day in his life. And he's already stronger than you. From day one, Krillin lives in a mirror. Every test, every tournament, every spar is a reminder. You're not the best. You might never be. Adler would call this the birthplace of an inferiority complexed tremor in the soul when comparison becomes a cage. You begin to orient around what you aren't, and the more you measure, the smaller you feel. Some people collapse here, okay? They make sarcasm their shelter. They quit before they can fail. Krillin doesn't quit. He weaponizes the sting. Adler said, there are 2 paths from inferiority: compensation that narrows you into obsession, grandiosity, cruelty, or creative striving that turns the ache into effort, the hurt into humility. Krillin chooses the second path. He trains when no one's looking. He learns technique to outthink force. He cultivates the courage to enter the ring even when the ring doesn't want him. Watch him in those early tournaments. He loses and bows anyway. He jokes through the fear and then fights through it. He doesn't pretend he's the strongest. He acts as if his presence still matters. That's the Adlerian pivot. From I must be superior to I will contribute. Worth moves from the scoreboard to the soul. And yet the shadow remains, because comparison doesn't vanish. It quiets and returns, especially when the scale explodes. When the Saiyans arrive, the gap becomes a canyon. Krillin's human lungs are breathing the same air as gods of battle. What does he do? He steps forward anyway. He's not the wall of muscle. He's the plan, the timing, the destructo disc thrown at just the right second because someone has to try. Adler insisted that the healthy response to inferiority is social interest to anchor your value in the community you serve, not the thrones you conquer. Krillin's entire arc tilts toward this. He fights because people are behind him, because there are names in his mouth when he charges. Not to dominate, but to protect. Not to be the headline, but to be the reason someone else gets to live. Zen threads through this, too. Comparison is a future-past obsession. Presence is a Zen act. Krillin's gift is not erasing enviance, touching the ground beneath envy. He feels the burn of being outclassed and still notices the simple things. The warmth of friends, the humor that disarms terror, the clear duty of stepping into his size without apology. He doesn't try to be Goku, he tries to be here. And here is where courage lives. The philosophical beat that defines him arrives not with the victory pose, but with the posture. Jaw clenched, knees shaking, back straight. Worth, he teaches us, isn't measured by victory. It's measured by presence, by the decision to be counted when it counts. The shadow of inferiority doesn't disappear. It becomes a contour he learns to live with, a shape that directs his striving rather than swallowing it. In a universe that worships ascendance, Krillin offers another myth, the sanctity of the ordinary person who chooses to matter. He is the reminder that greatness is not always a summit. Sometimes it's a stance. Sometimes it's a human standing in front of a storm, saying, I'm small, I'm scared, I'm still here. Namek is a green graveyard when Krillin steps onto it. Every breath tastes like a countdown. He knows the math. Frieza is beyond anything human, beyond anything sane. You don't win this fight. You survive it long enough to give someone else a chance. So he becomes timing, he becomes nerve. He becomes the sliver of possibility between despair and action. Watch the way he moves in those episodes, darting in when a distraction matters, shouting warnings when seconds count, hurling a destructo disc, not because it will end the war, but because it might open a door. This isn't heroism gilded in triumph, a service dressed in fear. Krillin's body is small, but his decisions aren't. He knows what Frieza is. He goes anyway. Zen calls this intimacy with impermanence. Impermanence is not a philosophy on Namek. It's the air pressure. Everything passes villages, planets, children, promises. In the face of that, denial is a sugar rush that fades at the first blow. Courage doesn't come from pretending you won't die. Courage comes from acting rightly while knowing you can. When Frieza lifts Krillin into the sky and the world holds its breath, the scene is not meaningless. It is a mirror. Memento mori. Remember, you will dissent. A threat here. It's instruction. Remember, you will die. And ask yourself what you will do with the time that remains. Krillin's answer has been consistent since the Turtle School. Be here for your people. Stand where it matters. Even his last scream becomes a seed. His death detonates something in Goku that no technique could. The final tear in the veil that births a legend. But the point is not that he dies for Super Saiyan, as if his worth is only catalytic. The point is that Krillin's life is coherent. Adler's courage to be imperfect is not a slogan. It's muscle memory. He does not need to be the best to matter. He needs to do his part as cleanly as he can, as faithfully as he can, even if the ledger never credits him with the win. Many heroes are fearless because nothing can touch them. Krillin is brave precisely because everything can. He's the trimmer who refuses to become a retreat. He's the panic that still points and shouts, move. He carries terror like a lantern, not a blindfold. Frieza wants the universe to bow to power. Krillin's existence argues otherwise. shows that meaning is not the monopoly of the invincible. Meaning is stitched in the small acts to split-second risks. The warnings, the willingness to be the one who draws the hit so a child can run. He is not the unbreakable shield. He's the hand on your back, pushing you toward life. Philosophically, this is the difference between worshiping strength and honoring courage. Strength asks, who cannot fall? Courage asks, who will stand, knowing they can? Krillin falls often, brutally, sometimes fatally. And then, when fate spins the wheel and delivers him back to the living, he stands again. That rhythm is his real power. Fall and rise, the human pulse refusing to concede the field to gods. Namek ends with scars that never fully close. But for Krillin, the scar is not just pain, it's orientation. It keeps him pointed toward what matters: people over pride, presence over glory, the next right action over the myth of invulnerability. In a saga that births a golden warrior, the little monk offers a quieter transformation, the alchemy of fear into fidelity. The bravest are not the ones who cannot be broken. The bravest are the ones who know they can be and protect someone anyway. After cataclysms and comebacks, Krillin's clearest victory doesn't crack the sky. It sets a table. It tucks a child in. Kay laughs in the kitchen. In a universe obsessed with ascension, he chooses something radical: the human scale. He marries Android 18, enemy turned ally, a weapon turned person. People joke about it as if it were a punchline. How did Krillin, the weakest, end up with a powerhouse? But that's exactly the point. He was the first to see her, not just her threat. He risked to save her when it made no sense strategically. He extended trust where the story offered only fear. That is not naivety, it's a practiced ethic. He had been betting on people, not power, since he was a boy with a shaved head and too much to prove. With 18, he doesn't become the domestic parody of a fighter. He becomes the whole version of a man the battlefield only hinted at. They have Marin, Ki, and suddenly his why is no longer abstract. The Zen masters would call this cutting through illusion. Enlightenment, not as fireworks, but as attention to what is here. Chop wood, carry water-packed lunches, fix the door, make the joke that breaks the tension. Nothing about this is lesser. It is the dharma of ordinary life. Adler called it social interest orienting. You're striving toward contribution, relationship, community. Krillin embodies this like a creed. His purpose isn't to dominate the scoreboard, it's to nurture the circle. He retires for a while, lets his hair grow, tries on a normal life, not because he surrendered, but because this is also worthy. And when the world calls, again, when another tournament opens, when another threat looms, he returns, not to advertise his relevance, but to stand with his friends. Tan, trying to rewrite his place in the pantheon. Tan, he's enforcing his place in the family. Watch how he competes in later arcs. There's lightness in him now, a humor that doesn't hide panic so much as transform it. He knows exactly where his ceiling is. He also knows exactly where his feet belong. He fights smarter, protects better, bows sooner, hugs longer. Power has stopped being a verdict on his worth. It's become a tool in service of what he loves. Zen teaches that clinging creates suffering. Krillin stops clinging to a fantasy self, the strongest human, the one who finally keeps up with God's hand, embraces the truth of his life. Husband, father, friend, fighter, when needed. The ordinariness is not a downgrade, it's a revelation. Sitting on a beach with 18 and Marin is not less than a beam struggle with a cosmic tyrant. It is another form of saving the world, one that operates at dinner table altitude. There's a moment many fans overlook Krillin stepping back into the arena after retiring. Not to reclaim glory, but to rejoin the rhythm of his people. He's scared, he jokes, shakes out his hands, and does it anyway. That's the thread running through every era of his life, the courage to be imperfect, again and again in public, with a smile. No cape, no prophecy, just a man who refuses to outsource his presence. Philosophically, he offers a correction to a culture that confuses spectacle with significance. The ordinary life embraced is not small. It is dense with meaning. Krillin's house is a sanctuary. His friendships are a net. His fatherhood is a quiet revolution in a lineage of warriors who often forgot how to be gentle. He will never be the strongest. He is something rarer, a person who knows his limits and loves within them fiercely. And when the alarms sound, he will put the GI back on, kiss his family, scared to let not, to prove he belongs among gods, but to prove that human courage was always enough to matter. By the time we reach the late Z arcs and into Super, Krillin has nothing left to prove to anyone except himself. Even that begins to soften. He's older now, father, a cop. The camera doesn't linger on him like it used to, and maybe that's the point. The story shifts to gods and universes. Krillin shifts to groceries and school pickups, but when the siren wails world ending or otherwise, he still ties his belt and steps outside. It's a small, beautiful episode in Super where Goku coaxes him back into training. They end up in a forest of phantoms, illusions conjured from Krillin's own fear. The faces of every villain who's ever broken him. Tambourine, Cell, Frieza stepping out of the mist like old nightmares with new teeth. He doesn't bulldoze them. He breathes. He shakes. He remembers why he ran in the first place. And then, trembling, he decides not to run this time. The specters dissolve when he stops feeding them. That's not the victory of a demigod. It's the victory of a man practicing attention. Zen would call it seeing through the mirage, choosing presence over panic. From there to the tournament of power is a straight line drawn in humble ink. A mortal in a ring with angels at the edges and universes on the bed. Krillin knows exactly where he ranks. He also knows exactly why he's there. He doesn't swagger. He strategizes, pairs with 18, and turns their love into tactics angles, feints, quick reads, a solar flare at the right heartbeat, a destructo disc when an opening snaps open and shut. He even helps eliminate an opponent through timing and trust. And for a breath, he's a son. Team cheering, 18's pride, quiet and clear. Then, because life is life, he's caught from the blind side and ringed out. No glorious crescendo. No statue, just a hand on his head, a rueful smile, and an honest, my bad. And still, when he steps off the stage, the people who matter don't lower their eyes. They raise their voices. His contribution is the metric here, not spectacle. He did his part. He acted within his limits, and for others. That's Adler's courage to be imperfect made flesh, refusing the lie that worth arrives only with flawlessness, choosing instead to show up with what you have, as you are. Krillin's candor has always been his shield. He admits fear instead of armoring over it before the tournament. To 18 and to himself, admitting fear is not surrender, it's calibration. He puts his feet on real ground so he can move without pretending he's a different species. Zen calls this humility, harmony with what is. To be small isn't failure, it's wisdom. The maple doesn't demand to be a mountain, just give shade. What makes these later arcs glow is how Krillin's bravery changes shape. Early on, it looked like sprinting at a tyrant he couldn't hurt. Later, it looks like stepping forward precisely because he knows he can be hurted, choosing anyway. It looks like trusting teamwork over ego. It looks like bowing when it's time to bow, cheering when someone else shines, and laughing at himself without cruelty. He doesn't deny weakness, he integrates it. His strength becomes a form of honesty. I'm scared, and I'm here. In a cosmos that worships the spectacle of invulnerability, Krillin keeps quietly redefining the word hero. Not the one who never flinches, the one who flinches and still acts. Not the conqueror who stands alone at the top. It's a companion who stands with his wife, with his friends, with his universe exactly as long as he's able, exactly as well as he can. That is a different, gentler kind of greatness. And if you listen closely, the philosophical beat is steady beneath every move he makes. Bravery is not the absence of fear, but the placement of love inside it. A destructo disc thrown with shaking hands is still a choice. A solar flare used to protect someone you'll hug later is still a sacrament. He is proof that imperfection doesn't disqualify you from meaning. It's the very place meaning enters. We opened with a question. What does it mean to be weak among gods? After Namek, after the forest of phantoms, after the tournament's echo fades, Krillin's life offers a clear human answer. Adler would say, strength isn't the polish of perfection. It's the stance of participation. The courage to be imperfect means you stop disqualifying yourself from life until you're flawless. You stop waiting to deserve presence. You step in scared, honest, limited, and you contribute. That's Krillin across decades. A man who knows he's not the sharpest sword and still chooses to be a steady hand. From a Zen lens, his arc is a sutra written in small acts. Impermanence is the rule. Power rises and falls. Even legends grow old. So he places his hands where they matter most. On his daughter's shoulders, on his partner's palm, on the mat when the bell rings. He lets the river be a river and looks for the stone he can stand on now. Enlightenment here isn't a halo. It's attention paid to ordinary moments until they shine. And that's why his bravery lands so deeply. He doesn't pretend he'll never fall again. He just vows to stand again when he does. He doesn't posture as the hidden strongest. He becomes the visible friend. He chooses a life that won't make the highlight reels and fills it with meaning anyway. Maybe that's the instruction we've been waiting to hear. You don't need a sacred destiny to live a sacred life. You don't have to outrun your fear to matter. You can walk with it. You don't have to be the best to be beloved. Show up. Tell the truth about how small you feel. Do the next right thing with shaky hands. Hold who you can. That's enough to bend a universe. Krillin didn't need to be the strongest. He needed to be present. And in a world obsessed with impossible ceilings, presence turns out to be the bravest thing of all. Krillin didn't need to be the strongest. He showed us that even the smallest life can hold the greatest courage. What's your favorite Krillin moment of bravery? The quiet kind? The human kind? And who should we explore next? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Putting it into words can be its own kind of courage. It helps us choose the next story to tell with you.